Well, good evening. We had a little bit of a false start this evening. YouTube/Google threw us a little bit of a curveball. Our scheduled stream stopped after 38 seconds. So I was successful, at least in being able to delete that thing so that people wouldn't see it. I'm hoping I do have a mic right now. Somebody said no mic, but I'll be listening. Ah, that's just Ron Crouch. Yeah, you can't talk. You can only type in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for coming by. I'm hoping I'll make this interesting and useful. One of the things that ACP can do, which is one of its more powerful features, and also it's one of its more confusing features, is customizing the file and folder names. You can pretty much do anything you want, but until you get the basics of it, it can be kind of intimidating. What I'm hoping I can do this evening is to answer questions, and please feel free to say hi or answer questions, and also go through this as much as I can within the time we have, and I'll be keeping it under a half an hour for sure, hopefully about 20 minutes. Okay, so the information on how to do this is in ACP Help. Once you open it up, you'll be able to, I'm hoping you can see my mouse. Well, anyway, customizing file and folder names under ACP Help, customizing ACP, customizing file and folder names. So, there's a lot of stuff in here, but it's actually pretty simple. If you take the time to look this over, it should make sense. For example, this concept of the template, which is really an important one. If you look here at the template, which I put here, it has these tokens in it. These are the things that ACP substitutes. So, for example, if I use this template that says image of $target name taken on the night of $date night, your files are going to be called image of whatever your target name is, in this case M57, taken on the night of, and then the date. So you can see the stuff that's in here that's not one of these templates or names, target, I call them tokens, is just going to be put in the file name literally. The way this is all set up, and the way you tell ACP what to do, and I'm going to get to making this clearer in just a sec, is there's a file called image file config, and that is saved in, and if you were with me last couple of weeks ago, it's in the configuration area. I'll show you exactly where that is. It would be public documents. Let's go to the File Explorer view. That makes it a little easier. Public documents, ACP config. That's it. There's a file on there called image file config. And that is what tells ACP how to mangle the file names into what you want, and folders too. So, getting back to ACP Help, let's have a look at more details here. There's a sample image file config. We're going to get back to that in a minute. All right. There's a tool that comes with ACP that will help you visualize how all this works. The template generator tool right here. So what it does is it's going to ask you some questions and try to generate a template for you. Of course, it doesn't do everything you can possibly do, but the idea here is that it will give you an idea by giving you a working model, a sort of a sandbox to work on the template and then see what the result in the file name would be. So, for example, this template is basically what ACP ships with. So you see these files come out of ACP that look like this: target name -s blah blah blah, r blah blah blah, c blah blah blah. And if you, hi Colin, if you've seen these and you're annoyed by them, this is not what ACP is not limited to that. However, it is a file naming scheme that will not have dupe clashes no matter what you put in your plan in terms of looping. And I can get to that if there's time. I'll tell you about sets, repeats, and counts. And by the way, all of what I'm saying tonight translates over to scheduler with a different set of tokens. If I have time, I'll also cover that, at least a little bit. But if you've done it for ACP, you can transfer that knowledge over to scheduler very easily. Okay, so this is what comes with ACP, and this is what's embedded in ACP as the template. It's just a template. ACP uses this template if you don't do anything or if there's no image file config at all. But let's see what you can do with this. First of all, it's going to ask you which class of ACP files are you customizing, and you can customize the file and folder names for images, calibration frames, that's darks and biases, and run logs. You can even customize the naming of those. I'm not sure that's that's a pretty lunatic fringe thing to do. And by the way, for autoflats, that's done in the autoflat config, and we'll cover that if there's time also. But it's the same exact concept of tokens and substitution. All right, so if you're customizing image files, then it's the image file config. If you're customizing darks and biases, it's the cal file config. So that's what's going on up here, is telling you what file to use and what the results will be. So let's customize image files. We have a choice of organizing them into folders by date or by the target name. You can also organize it into other type of folders. You could organize them into color. It gives you that, but you could start at the top with color, but it wouldn't make much sense. So anyway, if you decide to organize it by target name, now watch up here. Def path I'll explain in a minute. That's wherever your images are stored based on who you are on the system. Just forget that one for a minute. Look at this token. And when I change from organizing by date to by target name, I have the folder now has the target name as the folder name. See this? Instead of the date, which you're accustomed to seeing, probably if you've never customized these things. So you have a choice of organizing all of your images for a particular target into a single folder, even if you acquire them over lots of days. And that might be useful. So you have that choice. You could also, underneath that, separate them into separate folders for each color or band. So you have a choice of the color and the file name, which is filter here. Oops, can't. There. That's the color in the name of the file. Or you could separate them into separate folders and put it in the file name. So we have filter underneath the target name. Now we're organizing them by target, and then under that, organizing them by filter. Then we have the names, again, with the filter name at the end. Okay, does that all make sense so far? All right. Or no color at all. If you don't have any filters, you could just take the whole thing out. If you don't, you'll end up with no filt in the name, which you can get rid of by just taking that filter token out of the template. Now, making files unique. The way it works right now, or by default, is the sets, repeats, and counts. So within an observing plan, you can repeat the entire observing plan as a set, you can repeat the target as a repeat, and you can repeat the filter as a count. So you can have lots of different files of the same target, and by using sets, repeats, and counts, you keep them from generating duplicate file names. On the other hand, you could use the date and time, and a lot of people like this. Once they see it, they go, oh yeah, this is much easier. So this template generator will put something in there for you. I'm going to go back to putting the color in the file name. Now you see the name is going to be something like NGC1234 and then a date and time. This is UTC, by the way, and a filter name within a folder named for the target. Now, you want to include the binning in there. Bang, there's a binning template. So, what all is possible here? This is just a cribbing tool that you can use, and I'll get back to DropBox in a minute. It's just a cribbing tool. If you go back to customizing file and folder names, you can see after you read the basics here and look at some examples, which will be useful to you once you figure out that anything that's not one of those words that starts with a $sign gets put into the name literally. And I'll show you what I mean in a minute. But here are all the substitution tokens. So you have lots of things at your fingertips that you can use to customize both the folder names and the file names for your images, for your cal frames, and even for your logs. So I was going to mention what you do for autoflats. The autoflat process is kind of a separate engine in ACP, a separate script and set of config files, because there's so many variable things that you can do, whether you're doing it from a screen or from skyflats or whatever. So it has its own template, and they're actually separated for logic reasons inside there into a folder template and a file name template. And these are the standard ones again. Autoflat-0PA. And notice $flat-PA is a token. I'll show you that in a minute. Flat PA here, see it? So in the file name, it has literally -PA and then flat PA. What this will produce is autoflat-PA 350, or whatever your PA is, with the letters PA ahead of it. So again, try and keep in mind that anything that's not one of these tokens is going to get passed through and form part of the file name literally. So autoflat-PA 340-V-bin2-1-west or east. In this case, you can change that. Right now, it's commented out by default, but you can uncomment that and start working on making it in your own image. Same thing with the folders. It's usually by date night, and I'll mention that in a minute. I'll explain what date night means. And then auto flat. So you'll see those underneath your images. But remember, you've got to keep in mind that if you customize the folders for your images and you want your flats to go in there with them, you're going to have to go over here and customize this so that they end up in the same folder in a subfolder that you want or whatever. So planning is essential. Make sure you figure out what you want. Just let your mind go crazy. Figure out, if I could do this, that's what I do. Then sit down and sketch it out, figure out how to do it, and implement it. Once you figure out what you want to do, writing these template files only takes a few minutes. So I mentioned date night. This is something to know. It's a date that is the date at the beginning of the observing night. So many times you see images or whatever files produced by observatories where there's a date encoded in the name, and it switches at midnight or at UTC midnight or something. Somehow the date switches during the observing night. Date night is the local date of the run. So if it's September 1st when you start your run, that date's going to remain September 1st for the whole night. It's kind of a nice convenience if you're grouping images by date, that you don't end up with a jump in the date right in the middle of an image series. So keep in mind this is a really useful token for putting in your file names. And other than that, you have a UTC date and a Julian date, which is without the fractional part. So you have to be careful. This is only good for one day. If you use the Julian date, it won't separate your files. It doesn't change every second or anything like that, because it would have a giant decimal number behind it, and it would be ugly. So, but you see all the things that you can put into a file name or a folder hierarchy. So, cribbing tools, something to make it easier. Yes, that's right. Crib, that's what this template generator is. Thanks, Colin. So I encourage you to use this thing to help you visualize. Whoops, I went back. To help you visualize what it is that you can do and what the token, what the token looks like and so forth. Now, what I did a little earlier is I did some images with an image file config that hopefully I can show you here. Just a sec. Just ran them a little while ago. I need to go here and show you first that I have an image file config, and that image file config is this. If we have time, I'll tell you about how you do it separately for each of your web users. That's what this first line is if I log in as Denny and as a remote web user, I get my own template. Everybody can have their own template, and that's nice because that means everybody can have their documents delivered by Dropbox. Aha, that's what I didn't mention. Let me go back on that. One of the things that is, especially if you're using ACP remotely, but even not, if you have an observatory that you insist on team viewing in and then running everything as though you're standing in the observatory instead of using the web interface remotely, that is at your house or your office or on your mobile phone. Question here from Tolga is that once the template is produced, where does it go in ACP? Okay, Tolga, here. That is different scenes for each of these. Okay, you put it in Public Documents, ACP Config, that folder, Public Documents, ACP Config, and then there is the image file config file. If I open that and edit it with Notepad++, it brings up just exactly what I was showing you before, this file. ACP will look for it there. And if it finds that exact name, imagefileconfig.txt, it will read this in every time it starts a run. It'll plug this template into its file folder and naming generator, and then do what I've been telling you about for the last 20 minutes. I'm going to keep going here for a little longer. If some of you have to go, that's okay. Anyway, Dropbox delivery. What def path is, well, let me go back to ACP Help and I'll point you out. There. Okay, I'm doing all my own technical directing here at the same time, so it can take me a few minutes to switch scenes on this. All right, so if I go back to customizing file and folder names and I look down here for def path, image and cal files only. This is the default image folder as configured in ACP preferences. And this is where, if you're, I explained this 2 weeks ago, the difference between being local in the observatory and being observing by coming in over the web. If you come in over the web, your images have to go into a web accessible folder, which is a small area, a restricted area of the disk. But if you're a remote user and you can get the observatory to set you up this way, you can share a folder from your Dropbox and have that appear in the Dropbox, well, then share it with the observatory operator. Have the observatory operator then add your folder to his Dropbox or her Dropbox. Now you're paying for the space, but they have the ability to put things into your Dropbox folder. then you just put that folder name into the template here. Instead of death path, you put C:/ Dropbox, or wherever your Dropbox is. It might be somewhere, Dropbox lets you put its master or top end folder, and you may want also to have that put into an observatory folder. Okay, so what that says is now ACP is going to put all the images for people who observe standing physically in the observatory or team viewing or remoting in. All of the images are going to be put into C Dropbox observatory target name, NGC 2134, whatever, blah, 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 blah. So if that happens to be your Dropbox where you are, then your images are just going to come right in there. If you're running an observatory and people are coming in over the web, what will happen is you will have a Dropbox account, and then they will give you their folder name, and you'll put that in there. And then their images, and that would be in the case of me, if I was Ardeni, I would see C Dropbox, and let's say something along the lines of this. Now, if I'm Ardeni and I am using your observatory as a remote user, I share my folder Ardeni to you. You add it to your Dropbox. You are the observatory operator. Now, whenever I log in and submit work and do observing with ACP, pop, 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 the images come into my Dropbox right on my Mac or my PC in my living room. So there's no issue with transferring the files, FTPing and all that stuff. In fact, I'm giving some serious thought to just ripping FTP right out of ACP because the FTP server that's in there is really lame anyway. So this is such a much better way to deliver stuff. And if you get mixed up by this or you still don't get it, and I've done the best I can to explain it in ACP Help here, how to do that. And if you go back to the template generator, there is a little section in there. If using Dropbox or Cloud Sync. See that? In this case, images will not be in their usual places, blah, 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 blah. Are you using Dropbox? Click. And then it shows you that's where you put the cloud folder path. This is exactly what I just did, for example, here. So that's what to do. Does anyone have any questions, or are you all pretty happy with what I've done? I'm here. I'm not in a hurry to stop tonight. I'm actually very pleased that I got this thing rolling because I ran into a real ugly deal with Google about 10 minutes before I was supposed to start, but it's all good now. Okie dokie. Well, I'm hoping this has helped you figure out, how to do this. Oh, I should mention something real quick before we go. For Scheduler, it's a very similar thing. There is an image file config, a sample that comes with Scheduler. So let me go use the file thing for that. Public documents, ACP config, which is where we've been looking. But then inside the Scheduler folder, there are some other things that Scheduler uses. They were moved here, by the way, as a result of file security changes going from Windows Vista to 7 to 10. I ended up having to move things so that they would be editable. Let me get this on the right TV scene here. There we go. Okay, so for Scheduler, you go same old place, public documents, ACP config, but Scheduler, and you'll see there's a sample image file config here that comes with Scheduler. That's because I don't have a super detailed help page like I do for ACP. So I just assume that you've already figured it out with ACP, and I give you the sample image file config, which I've copied to image file config here. And so I just put the tokens in here. They're different because the whole way scheduler works is different. It has projects, plans, observations, and image sets, and they usually form a key part of the file name. If you're using the Astro Imaging form of scheduler, it's going to create files with specific names and projects with specific names, and so you'll want to pull the names of the image files from those things. There's not an ACP observing plan. Colin asks about best practices. Well, the template generator pretty much gives you the best practices for most usages. Once you answer the questions in the template generator, you'll have a template that you can just directly copy right out of there and use in your image file config. Not for the scheduler, mind you, but for the ACP ones. And then you can take that, take that knowledge and transfer it over to scheduler. But with this here, by using this template generator, this pretty much, and answering these questions, this pretty much will give you best practices for file naming. And you, let's take this cloud folder thing out of here, and assuming you're not going to go with that, oops. Oh, put your mouse over the right one here. There you go. Okay. You can take this template right out of here, copy with the mouse, go over to your image file config, and paste it in right there. Boom. And that's it. So, you know, that's the best I can do at the moment. So getting back, thanks, Colin. Anyway, thanks for asking the question. For scheduler, there's all these other templates, but the same things work in terms of the way it works. The one with no square brackets is for the observatory operator, the person who's standing physically in the observatory or insists on logging in through TeamViewer to do their observing. And the other ones are by username, and those are the usernames that are used to log in with the web to both scheduler, well, ACP Expert. I should mention one other very obscure feature. Once it looks at all the specific templates for users, there's another template that if you put a star in there like this, now any web user that isn't specifically mentioned will get this template. For example, this is used up at the Great Basin Observatory where there are over 200 people with accounts, and rather than having to list all 200 of them to get their special template for delivery by DropBox, they have a scheme where the Dropboxes are named after them, and sure enough, there's a way to get that name and username here. So that becomes the folder name. So without having to list separate templates for everybody, they get separate templates for everybody, but just by not having to have them all in image file config. So like I say, that's kind of an obscure feature, but it's really useful, and really without it, GBO and other big student observatories would be hurting bad. So this, just to keep that in mind also. I think we're up to a half hour now. I think this pretty much covers it. I encourage you to get back to ACP Help, and let me bring that back up, and look this stuff over again. It's really worthwhile. It's one of ACP's most flexible and powerful features, and it's also the most misunderstood. I know one thing I wanted to show you. I did some imaging earlier. One other very important thing. I'm sorry. This is one thing I wanted to do. I won't even. Let me get to this here. Bring old ACP out here and take some of these other windows out of here. Okay. Do I have a separate ACP? No. Okay. In ACP Help, there's a thing called Where Are My Files? For ACP, this is really useful. Don't worry about this security warning. I tried everything I knew how to get rid of it. Just say yes, and then this thing will open. It's actually executing JavaScript inside the help system. But what this does is let you see what is happening to your image and cal files and log files, and depending on whether you're standing in the observatory or you have gone in with TeamViewer and then started up the browser off of ACP's console, which means you are essentially physically standing in the observatory and could delete everything on the oh, hold on. There, that's what I should have done. Let me bring this back up. I think I can put this. No, okay, it doesn't know about that. So let me go back to my desktop here. This is a different window that I didn't have configured. So hopefully you can see this okay. What you can do with this is, well, you know what? Hold on. There's a better way to do this. Stand by just for 2 seconds. Let's go back to ACP Help and bring it out onto my stage here and go to Where Are My Files here. Bam. There we go. All right. Now you can see it. All right. That's much better. I should have known to do that in the first place. Just a sec. All right. So each one of the types of files, data and light images, darks and biases, run logs, you'll see it detects whether or not it has been customized or not. And if you want, you can open the actual file that has been customized. What do you know? Right there. Or go to the directory that contains the customizing image file config. Okay, so that helps you navigate, and it does the same for any customization that you've done for darks and biases or logs, flats. It's always set in auto flat config, so you can go here and check that. There it is. And then you can go see the folder and file templates here. Okay. Or if you come in over the web and log in with a username and password and therefore are not standing in the observatory, but you're using the remoting feature of ACP, same thing. It lets you see whether it's been customized, which it has. There's one there anyway. And it can show you even the web document root, which is not something you should be looking in. And if you need more about that, go back to 2 weeks ago to my Where Are My Files, and you'll understand why they are the way they are and why trying to spelunk behind the web server and bypass the system and do things the old-fashioned way is just going to bring you pain that you really don't need. So, okay, I kind of went around in circles here, but I wanted to show you this. This is really important. The Where Are My Files? That's also an ACP Help, along with just about everything else you ever wanted to know about ACP, that's for sure. So you've seen me post things. Could you go over the large user setup again for scheduler? Large users. Oh, okay. Yeah. You mean, that's Dick Post wants to know how to set scheduler up, well, ACP Expert actually up for large numbers of users with the scheduler and DropBox delivery. We'll go over that one more time. Yes, we can. All right, so let's do this. Let me go back to the scheduler image file config, which is, let's just find it. No, I'm not going to say that. Here's the image file config that comes with scheduler. How about if I change my scene here? There we go. All right. So let's say you have 100 different ACP accounts those would be people, and bring this out here and just show you what I mean by that. I don't have 100 in here, so server users. Okay, so all these people, there's lots of people on here, let's say. Each one of these people who log in with a username, in this case, J Dokes for Joe Dokes, or Jack, or G Walk for Gary Walker, and all of that. So, me, etc. Galileo, let's use him. GG, Galileo for gravity. So he would log in through the web. Let's just do that, just to show you what that looks like, so you know. This is a Chrome scene. Why is that? Oh, I know why. It's got the wrong window. Sorry, I'm going to have to punt on this. There we go. All right, so bob.dc3.com tells ACP I'm a remote person from God only knows where, and I log in. Oh, Galileo, that's who I wanted to log in as. Sorry about that. Let's do that one more time. It still believes it's me. Well, we're logged into the observatory, and you saw me log in with my username and password. So now, ordinarily, I would have a My Documents here. I went over all this 2 weeks ago, but and anyway, that's where my images would normally go. Blah blah blah. So, so how do you set this up for 200 people? Let's say you're okay with this as a template. I'm not going to go back and design a template for, let's say that's good enough for everybody in the whole place. So the first thing you do is set it up saying anyone who logs in through the web would get this template. Now, here's our rule. Let's say if you're going to use, you know, the Snowy Peak Observatory, and it's running ACP Expert, and you're the ACP Expert manager at Snowy Peak, and you know you have 200 people out there, and there are 200 usernames in ACP like Ardeni and J Dokes and Galileo and all, or GG and all those people. So the rule will be you have to have a Dropbox account, or this can work with Google Drive too, but let's just use Dropbox because I like it better. I'm irritated at Google right now anyway. So you need a Dropbox account, and you need to create a folder that has your ACP username. So I need a folder Ardeni. Dick Post would be RS Post. That would be your, if you had that as your login to Snowy Peak. So you create this Dropbox folder, name that. And now you share it with the observatory operator up at Snowy Peak. That, when you do that, that observatory operator has the option of adding that folder to their Dropbox. If you've used Dropbox, you know what I'm talking about. You then basically end up with somebody else's space mapped as a folder on your Dropbox. Then, in your image file config, which for some reason this is, oh, I know why. All right. So here for our template, instead of DefPath, which would be the normal place for web users' images to go that the web server can get to, instead, at Snowy Peak, the Dropbox is located on d:/big/Dropbox. Okay. So what did I do here? d:/big/Dropbox. Okay. That is going to be, for Snowy Peak, the equivalent of what I have for Dropbox on my Office machine. It's right here. It's just d:/Dropbox, right? And there's all the stuff that the things that people have shared with me, right? So I would have an RS Post or a Ardeni folder here, and that folder would be space that belongs to Ardeni or RS Post, and anything I put in there at Snowy Peak, anything I drop in there is going to end up on that person's machine, and a little bubble is going to pop up and saying, boom, this image has appeared. And then a little while later, another one and another one. And Dropbox is going to do that in the background while the observing is going on. So that D Dropbox, and I'll just use that as my example. What the heck, right? D Dropbox. Dang it. What did I do here? Thought I was pasting. D Dropbox. And then one more token. $USR name. Okay. Again, username is the scheduler username for the current project. So, this is incorrect. I'm being incorrect. There is a possibility that the name that's in the scheduler is a friendly name, not the user login name. It can be, I apologize, folks. You use the name that you show up in scheduler as. That would be the name of your folder in Dropbox that you share, and the name that goes in here. The point being, Dropbox username is the path to that astronomer's space that he shared with you and that you put into your Dropbox. So if RS Post was Dick Post on the scheduler, or RS Post maybe, who knows? Anyway, he would share that file with Snowy Peak. Snowy Peak's operator would add that to the Snowy Peak Dropbox, put this in here, and it would cover everybody. Because no matter who you are, if you share a folder with your username in it, and the Snowy Peak operator puts that into their Dropbox, then this one template is going to cover everybody, as long as they all are happy with the folder and image folder hierarchy and image naming. In the case of Great Basin, they told everybody, all right, you guys have a chance to design what you want for image names and folder organization, but everybody gets the same thing. It's like Henry Ford. You can have any color as long as it's black. So they did that, and they put it in there, and then no matter how many more people they add, it all just works without them having to go in and edit this image file config for every new person that comes on there. Colin, I see you want a write-up on how to do that. Well, now you have a video to do that. There are only probably a dozen observatories that can benefit from that large number of users, but if you just look at this video, you got it, right? But I would not want to bulk import a large number of users. I see. What you're looking for is bulk importing accounts into ACP. Go ahead and post that on the Comm Center. I'll answer that. There is a web service with which you can interact if you're an administrator, and there's a way to use that web service to add accounts remotely to ACP. So that's a totally different topic here, but thank you. Okay, and Dick Post says he gets it, and the video's even better. Yeah, now that I've told you how to do it, you've got it, right? So and since it's only being used by I'll say a dozen or maybe 2 dozen, I don't know, for that many who have that many users. Most people are just a handful of users, and they all want something different, like teams of people and so forth. So, well, this has been going on for 45 minutes. I'm really happy to see questions and responses. I apologize for the microtype on the chat scroller. I got bit by Google twice tonight. The first one was that I had some nice cascading style sheet stuff that I had rigged up to make the chat very easy, big, big type and all of that, so it's easy to read. And then Google went and this is this is always a risk. They went and changed their HTML, which made my CSS for it break, and it came out all white with yellow circles. So I had to rip the CSS out and just put the raw chat right out of the browser into this video streaming system, but it worked out okay. I think that pretty much is going to do it for tonight. I'm pretty happy with this one. Much more relaxed, even though I had a really ugly surprise with YouTube at the beginning. I managed to recover, and I'm sure glad you guys found the new stream. Turned out, by the way, that those of you who didn't see last week's because the scheduled one never even started, this time the scheduled one only lasted for 36 seconds, and then, I had to quickly recover from that. Turns out I'm not the only one who's had trouble with this, with YouTube on this. There's lots of stuff about it on the web. So anyway, hopefully I'll be better at it next time. Thank you very much for watching. This was really fun tonight, much more so than the other ones. I'm hoping I'm maybe hitting a stride on this. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. Thanks.